Hey everybody, it's Luca from Rackets Runners. Now we've got a bit of a different video today. We're not actually play testing any particular product, but we're taking a look at the brand new diagnostic machine from Wilson, the Baiardo Tune Pro. What's special about this machine is that it can actually diagnose a pickleball paddle. That means it can test weight, swing weight, flex, deflection, and has a number of other really cool features that could be game changing for the future. So Brian and I went to the store early one morning to see if we could kind of play around with some of the cool features it has to offer. Now we're still trying to figure out what some of these numbers actually mean, but we figured we'd show you some of the cool stuff the machine can do and then try to put those numbers into perspective as to how they affect playability on court. So we just got this cool Wilson Baiardo Tune Pro, and what's pretty special about this swing weight machine is that you can actually test pickleball. So pickleball's right there. I've already got the Poach Havoc 2.0 on the machine, and this swing weight machine a little bit different to previous ones because there's actually space for a pickleball paddle to go on it without needing to kind of get extended. So let's just test it out, see what the swing weight is. All right, listen to that beep. And there you have it, 76. I know that's a little different to what pickleball swing weights have been until recently, but the reason for that is because up until now, a lot of people have been measuring swing weight starting at the butt cap, so they would actually pretty much extend the paddle up till here, but it doesn't make much sense because you're not holding the paddle here when you're playing, you're holding it here. Let's stop there for a second because these numbers are obviously pretty different to what's available on Tennis Warehouse and other forums. At this point in time though, these are the official swing weight numbers that Wilson wants us to move forward with, but I'll explain why there are different numbers floating around. Basically, there are 3 different pivot points at which the pickleball industry is taking swing weight. At the end of that clip, I mentioned why taking the swing weight pivot point at the butt cap might not make sense, but the only reason Wilson has put it so far up this paddle on this machine is because that's what the norm is in tennis. Whether that's the way forward in pickleball remains to be seen, but it's not without its issues. Taking the swing weight so far up the paddle basically makes the paddle shorter. The problem is that a pickleball paddle is already so short that the difference in swing weight will be much smaller at this length. Think about it in terms of percentage change. A change in swing weight from 78 to 80 with this standard is much more consequential than a change from 135 to 137, but the numbers don't make that so clear. The other obvious issue here is that such a low number can't be as precise. Is that 76 we're getting here actually 75.5? Is it 76.4? That difference would actually be pretty significant. So it's not a perfect system, but we're in contact with Wilson and other companies as to what we're going to use going forward. But for now, this is what we've got, and we tested a bunch of other paddles to see what happened to swing weight with different lengths, shapes, and what happens when you add lead. All right, so let's give it a run. You release, you wait a little second, and there you have it. Get your swing weight. Now we're gonna try another extended paddle, the Selkirk Invicta Vanguard midweight, and we'll throw it on there. Let it go, wait a second, and there you go, 77. So one thing you'll notice is that a lot of extended paddles have similar swing weights, and a lot of the shorter paddles have similar swing weights. You look at another extended paddle like the Pro Drive, which has a really top heavy balance. We'll throw that on there, release it. That one comes in at 90, which is a huge difference because when you're this low of a swing weight, 10 points is much bigger in terms of a feel difference, obviously because in terms of percentage change, it's quite a bit more. All right, now here's something that's gonna be quite interesting. We just added 5 grams of lead to the Pro Drive and right at 12 o'clock, so this will be most consequential on swing weight. So this one swung at 90 without the lead. Okay, so 4 points increase in swing weight. Adding lead can, especially higher up the paddle, can have a very consequential effect on playability. So it'll make, obviously, the paddle swing a little bit slower, but add a lot of plow through, a lot of power, a lot of stability, and it'll make it feel softer. So you just saw how 5 grams of lead at 12 o'clock drastically changed the swing weight. Like I mentioned, that's going to affect a lot of the paddle's playability, but it's pretty cool to see the swing weight increase in practice using the machine. Switching gears a little bit here though, we've only tested extended paddles up till this point. Brian and I were both very curious to see how big a difference in swing weight there would be with shorter paddles, so we threw some on here to test. Now we're gonna test a shorter paddle. So the Selkirk S2 amped lightweight, and we're gonna see how that swings compared to a longer paddle. So stick that in there, make sure it's all the way in there, and again, it resets automatically. You can just tell how fast it's swinging 61, so significantly lower. Obviously that's going to mean it's a much quicker paddle through the air, but you're also going to sacrifice a bit of plow through power and spin potential. So we'll test another shorter paddle. Let's see what we got here. Now we got the Epic Lightweight. Same length as the S2, so should be similar. Obviously this one has a little bit less material. So 61, obviously it resets. That one comes in at 63. So I was actually pretty surprised here because I thought the Epic was going to swing slower than the S2 because the face is smaller, so the paddle should be more aerodynamic. It's pretty surprising that it actually swung higher, but that could be Selkirk's way of making the Epic a slightly more advanced paddle, I guess. Not as maneuverable, but packs a bit more punch, and it's a little bit more stable. But anyways, now we're going to move on to another great feature on this machine, the weight and balance test. We're going to throw on the Epic Lightweight that we just tested, as well as the heavier midweight version of it to see what gives. All right, so just remember to zero it before you put the paddle on. And there's actually a second sensor here, obviously. So I'll put that Epic Lightweight on now. And there you go. So a very interesting thing here is going to be testing the Epic Lightweight versus the Epic Midweight. Obviously, pretty much a half-ounce difference in terms of static weight, at least advertised. We got the Lightweight here, 7.4, 8.9. Let's try this with the midweight, and then we'll throw it on the swing weight scale as well. So got an Epic midweight here. Put that there. There you go. So pretty much identical balance. Okay, 0.1 inches difference, but 8.1 ounces. So significantly heavier, 0.7 ounces heavier. Now, a really interesting thing here is going to be testing that swing weight, because obviously if it's heavier with the same balance, it should swing quite a bit heavier. So let's go ahead, click on swing weight. So that's the midweight. Now remember, the lightweight swung at 63. Throw the paddle on there, go. Now we're expecting a higher number than 63 here, 68. So that makes sense, 5 points heavier than the lightweight, and obviously that's because it's got similar balance, just much heavier static weight. So that's another very interesting set of specs there. The midweight and lightweight Epic have nearly identical balance, but it all adds up because of the higher swing weight on the midweight. Obviously, if a paddle weighs more and it has the same balance and shape, it's going to swing heavier, and it did. All right, now those are obviously probably the most important specs on a pickleball paddle. Obviously weight, balance, swing weight. But this machine can do more. Whether this is important at the moment is still to be determined, but we're gonna check the flex of a paddle. Okay, let's stop there because obviously we're switching it up again here. Now obviously swing weight, static weight, weight and balance, all that good stuff is super important. We know that already, but Wilson didn't want to stop there with this machine. Flex is a very, very important rating in tennis because it basically determines a racket's power to control ratio. So they've given us a flex test for a pickleball paddle here. Power to control ratio is equally important in pickleball as it is in tennis, but does it come down to flex like it does in tennis? Well, we threw on a bunch of paddles to test it out, and the results are very interesting. I'm gonna just run you through the flex here. So it's how much the paddle actually bends. You'll see it bending on this machine here. Now, don't be scared. The machine knows what it's doing. Now, having said that, it's probably gonna crack our paddle here, but it's a thermoform paddle, so maybe not. All right, there you go. All right, so Brian just set it up here to test the flex. Now, it's called horizontal bending. So it's how the paddle flexes like this, and press start. All right, so don't be scared. Trust that carbon. All right. Oh, you're gonna keep going. All right. So 73 RA. Now that's the Carbon 1X Power, which is obviously a thermoform paddle, and it feels incredibly stiff. Now whether that's due to flex in this sense, we'll see. Let's throw on another paddle here to test. So if this were a tennis racket, 73 would be a pretty average number for flex, but you're going to see in a second here that it ends up being a very high number for pickleball. Rackets with a higher RA, which is stiffer rackets, are more powerful because the ball spends less time losing energy during ball pocketing and shoots out more instantly. As we test more paddles here, you'll see that it could definitely be similar for pickleball. Now, of course, core deflection should also come into play. This machine can also test a paddle's core deflection, but we're still very much trying to wrap our heads around the numbers we got after a few tests there, so it's too early to make any qualitative assessments based on our results. But we'll check out a few more paddles flexes here to see if we can gather more information. We're gonna do an interesting test here. We're going to see if there is a major difference in flex between a 13 millimeter and 16 millimeter version of the exact same paddle. In this case, the Poach Havoc 2.0, which is a fantastic paddle, by the way. Slightly lesser known brand, but we love them because they're out of Victoria, BC. And retest. Oh, okay. It just does it automatically. 65 RA. So I'm not sure I'll have put this in the video, but we tested the Carbon 1X Power, and that came in at 73, which is quite a bit stiffer than this one, which is 65 RA. That one was 73. So let's see how the 13 mil compares to the 16 mil. Now, I really don't have a guess here. If I were to make a guess, I would say stiffer, but that could be very wrong. And retest. 56 RA. That's crazy. I mean, that's 9 points lower. Thinner paddles are generally considered more powerful. But in tennis, a stiffer racket is considered more powerful. I mean, it just is more powerful. So plenty of interesting stuff to diagnose here. Now, obviously, this is a more introductory video on what this machine can actually do, but there's a whole chasm of kind of research and trials that we can do off of this. But let's just test another Havoc 2.0 just to compare, like the exact same paddle that we just tested, just to see if flex is actually important. Because if this comes out to 90, I don't think, I don't know. Let's just try it. Okay, so they're remarkably close in terms of flex. Great quality control. That's quite interesting because that's a 13 mil Poach Havoc 2.0, and we tested the Carbon 1X Power earlier. So it definitely could be that a higher RA makes for a more powerful paddle. The Carbon Power is the stiffest of the 3 paddles we just tested, and it's by far the most powerful on court. But the fact that the thinner Poach paddle was more flexible than the thicker one makes me sort of rethink that hypothesis. It's generally understood that thinner paddles are more powerful than thicker ones, but again, that could be down to the actual core thickness rather than the flex. Another possibility is that a higher flex rating makes for a more stable paddle. Higher flex means the paddle moves less on impact, and again, the Carbon is the most stable of the 3 we tested by far. This is also backed up by the fact that the thicker Poach Havoc is more stable than the thinner one. We'll test the flex on a couple more paddles with different constructions to gather a little more evidence. All right, now, obviously this is gonna be very cool too because it's a gearbox paddle, full Carbon paddle. I'm guessing it's gonna be super stiff. So let's test it. 79 RA, so that's the stiffest one we've tested by far. Wow, this is cool. Yeah, that is wild. Very interesting here, and it's a super powerful paddle. Now, this one might look similar to the way gearboxes are constructed, but you can see right there, it says polymer honeycomb core. So let's throw it on this stiffness scale. What are you guessing here, Brian?
I'm thinking that's gonna be 62.
So the reason he's saying so soft is because it's got a honeycomb polymer core. It's got a massive hole here, which has to affect stiffness, right? And it's thin. So if we're taking all those things into consideration, I mean, you look at the Poach Havoc 2.0, that was 13 millimeters versus the 16 millimeter one was softer. Honeycomb polymer core is softer than the full Carbon construction. All right, let's test it. Enough guessing. 65, what'd you guess? 64?
62.
62? Yeah, so it's one of the softest paddles that we've tested so far. Okay, so the Vanguard Power Air Invicta being the softest of the bunch kind of throws a wrench in the works here, but it's kind of hard to compare a paddle with a literal hole in one of the key flex areas with other paddles. So whether or not we found anything concrete is still kind of up in the air, and there's definitely a lot more to dissect, but basically this Baiardo Tune Pro gives us the opportunity to look at pickleball paddles in a way that we just haven't been able to up until now. We'll take more of a look at paddle bed deflection in the future because this machine also lets us do that, but for now I'm going to keep comparing paddle stiffnesses to on-court experiences and play around with the swing weight and balance of standard and extended length paddles to see if I can further my research, I guess. We'll keep you guys updated with our findings as we get more familiar with the machine, but for now, please remember to like and subscribe and visit us on our website, racketsandrunners.ca.